Welcome to a special edition of Sports Now. I'm Kirsten Peters, and today we will reveal the 2018-2019 Wilkes Beacon Athlete of the Year tournament bracket. Throughout the year, you've seen both male and female athletes every week in the Beacon. Now, we'll take all of this year's Athletes of the Week, along with 12 additional at-large bids for each gender, and seed them in a tournament where they'll try to become the next Athlete of the Year. Now I'll bring in the committee chair and Beacon editor-in-chief Luke Modrovsky alongside counterpart co-sports editor Ben Mandell. Guys, great to have you with us today.
As always, it is a fun time of year to see this come together. A lot of hard work throughout the day on Friday, long time Friday. The selection committee met to place both 30 men and 30 women into their respective brackets. In each bracket, 18 automatic qualifiers, as determined by the previous Athletes of the Week, will join 12 at-large bids.
Yeah, it's great to feature some of these outstanding student athletes on the Wilkes campus. They put in hard work into their respective programs week in and week out, and now they'll get a chance to let their accomplishments shine.
That's right. This year, we changed things up a little bit. After looking through last year's tournament, we noticed we were missing something. We needed to introduce at-large bids. So that's exactly what we did. So we came together and said, hey, let's expand the field. And in doing so, it allowed us to get more athletes involved who were maybe overlooked as an Athlete of the Week.
It'll be interesting to see how these changes play out. An online version of the bracket will be available Monday morning on thewilkesbeacon.com. The champion of each bracket will be featured in a full-page champion spread in the final edition of the Beacon that prints on April 16th.
All right, so now let's take a look and talk about how all of this works. Kind of look at the selection process here. We see, okay, we looked at some primary criteria. So we looked at the big things. So the on-the-field accolades, on-the-field things like that. And looking through the secondary criteria, maybe some off-the-court stuff that we looked at, and then as well the tie-breaking criteria. Looking at multi-sport athletes, and then looking at contributions outside of on-the-field stuff. So now over to the Twitter poll stuff. We take a look there, and all polls will be conducted via the Wilkes Beacon Twitter platform. And last year we saw over 2,200 votes come in. This year, with the expansion, we expect to see over 5,000 votes. So each day will start at 11 a.m. and conclude at 11 p.m. And of course, any use of automated Twitter accounts is a little clicker jump in there. Maybe just a little too excited about this year's tournament, but any use of automated Twitter accounts is prohibited and it's against Twitter's terms of service. So we had maybe a little bit of problems with that last year, so just kind of making sure that's clear for everybody. And of course, the Beacon staff reserves the right to rule out any incident not listed here, and so we'll look at that. So we talked about the schedule there a little bit. Now we're going to move on to the Twitter poll. Now we'll move on to the schedule.
Voting will take place from Tuesday, April 9th to Saturday, April 13th, with polls being open from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. each day. Be sure to get your votes in for the athletes on both sides. Now we have the tournament schedule.
Yeah, so pretty much one vote every day. And Kirsten, I think everybody's ready for the big bracket reveal. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think it's time to reveal this year's bracket. First, for the women. On the women's side, we have number 3 seed Kirsten from women's lax, and we have number 30 Celine Podlesny from Wilkes women's softball. We have women's soccer, Allison P., and then we have her facing off against Maddie Kelly, who plays women's basketball and women's field hockey.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this this first pod here. Kirsten obviously having an outstanding year. Look for her to, I think, advance deep into this tournament. But we've seen crazy things happen. So if somebody gets a little head of steam here in terms of momentum.
Yeah, Kirsten actually went to my high school, so I've seen her play for about 8 years now.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I think look out for Luke's dark horse, maybe Maddie Kelly as well. I know Luke thought she probably should have been higher up. She probably could have. But we do have a lot of very good athletes on this list. So
yeah, and when we debated it, that's just what it came down to.
Very difficult to seed them.
So now we'll take a look at a second pod.
In our second pod, we have number 11 seed Dallas Kendra for women's field hockey, and we have women's swimming Abby Keating And then we have women's tennis, Laura Zielinski, versus women's soccer, Jessica Egan.
So one of the things we looked at with Dallas Kendra, she's had quite an outstanding career, but remember, you can't look at it in terms of the career. One of the things that we as a committee decided was, okay, hey, this is an athlete of the year, not athlete of a career. So Dallas Kendra, if we look at her whole career, maybe could have been seeded higher, but for this year we felt the 11 seed was probably about appropriate.
Yeah, I think the seed to look out for here is the 6th seed from women's soccer, Jessica Egan. Fantastic year on probably one of the better teams on campus. Definitely someone to watch out for here. Probably one of the seeds outside of the top 5 who has a really good shot of winning this.
All right, pod 3.
We have Jordan Basarkovi against Sarah Carlini, and then we have Ashley Castor against Samantha Cesari.
So yeah, looking here, we tried to avoid any matchups where the same team would face off until the quarterfinal round. So we had to do some bouncing around. So there were some people that went up and went down. Jordan Vasarkovi has had again, she's another one that's had an outstanding career.
Yes.
She, again, and it's almost kind of unfair, I think, to the spring athletes because you don't get the full sample. We're only getting a sample size, rather.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think
Yeah.
that hurt baseball a lot as well in the men's side.
Oh, 100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Vasarkovi, I think if she finishes out the year, we get to see where she finishes in her tournament. Maybe she's seeded a little bit higher. But with the sample that we have
I mean,
now,
she was still the top
Yeah.
women's tennis player in the
right.
seeding.
Yeah.
Okay, and then at the bottom of this bracket, we have our number 15 seed, Caitlin Brown, and we have Ashley Burkhart facing off against her. The winner of that will face off against the number 2 seed, Haley Gajewski.
Now, one of the things that we definitely screwed up last year was Gajewski's seeding.
Wasn't she an 8?
We looked at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't get in the double digits, but that was one of the things that we looked back to last year, and sometimes you just miss it.
We took a lot of heat from Sports Information about that.
Yep, and honestly, looking back, Gajewski, although I'm not convinced that maybe she was a 1, probably should have been in the 2 or 3 range.
I
A little bit
agree.
higher up, we agree.
Hindsight 2020.
Yep.
There's the first half of the women's bracket. Let's take a look at the rest of the field. Okay, we're going to start with number 16 seed, women's soccer, Ashleen Speranza against field hockey's Lauren Shiplett. And then we have softball's Grayson Stoughton against women's tennis's Erin Belutza. Then we have women's ice hockey's Kendall Castro against women's soccer's Neve Harkins.
You look at Staunton last year, obviously the reigning champion. She's had a decent year so far, and again, this is where I think the spring sports kind of get the they just don't have the advantage
You
here.
get the short end of the stick
They
here.
do. They really do. I think if Staunton finishes out the year, she's probably seeded 4 or 5, depending on, again, her accolades and things like that. Because we do take everything into account. We look at statistics. We look at conference awards, at different sort of accolades. We had some ECAC players involved in there. So that's just kind of some things we were looking at.
I think also, too, Staunton is a great example of the seeding. Well, it matters based off of your matchup. It doesn't matter completely because last year she wasn't a top. She was, I believe, the 4, and she won it all.
Yeah.
So if you have a good showing,
It's your voting on
polls,
Twitter. It's really how many
Yeah.
people come out to support you.
If you have a good showing, you can get this done.
Now, I will say Staunton last year got a heck of a lot of support there from the Carolinas.
Yeah, her home state of North Carolina definitely gave her some help.
All right.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the next pod. We have women's soccer's Nicolette Towlin facing off against women's volleyball, Carly Huffman. Then we have a dual sport athlete, Allison Jolly, who plays women's ice hockey and women's lacrosse, facing off against softball's Haley Welker.
And again, Nicolette Towlin obviously had just another great year. Really a true speedster for women's soccer.
She's someone who's had a great career, honestly.
Again, a real asset to the women's soccer program. I think Coach McNichol has really spoken highly of her. Her speed is just outstanding. 'Cause you could see him dump the ball in the corner there, and boom, she goes and takes care of business.
Kind of throw it up and let her go chase it. I mean, look, we covered soccer quite a bit this year, and there's a lot of women's soccer players on this team, on this bracket, and
There might be the most.
she was the go-to player on the team. So, putting her where she is, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, a senior leader. I think women's soccer has 7
Yeah,
women in the bracket,
like
and
that,
I think
yeah.
they definitely have
I know
the
we
most.
made some last-minute adjustments,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay, now into the next pod. We have women's tennis, Francesca Barella-Seri facing off against women's soccer's Emily Worth. And then we have field hockey's Mackenzie Sweeney facing off against women's volleyball's Jamie Mikovic.
Then, of course, you have Fran, as they call her. She's, again, had some good matches. Fran's had some struggles, but I've been excited to see her build off of those. There'll be times where maybe she loses a tough match, and she seems to bounce right back. So that's why I think she got herself into where she's seated.
Yeah, I agree. I think two other names to look at here: Emily Worth and Jamie Mikovic.
Yeah.
I mean, Mikovic showed just how good she really is.
Yeah.
This
She had
season.
a fantastic year.
One of the best players in the entire Northeast. So, I mean, she's earned her spot as a top 4 seed this year out of the 30 female athletes.
And now we have to talk about that dual sport athlete at the top. What do you think, Kirsten?
Oh, number 1 seed, Gab Giordano. She awaits the winner of Speranza and Shiplet, but she's our dual sport athlete for women's basketball and softball. And she was a transfer student.
And so here's a couple of things that just kind of blow my mind. And I know Gab, when we kind of told her here, she was real excited, but she's a transfer student.
Yeah.
She not only plays women's basketball, but she plays softball.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is she excels in both.
She's probably going to be, she was already all conference in
Yeah.
basketball. She'll probably be all conference in softball
Yep.
as well. I mean, for her to come here for her senior year and
Yeah.
excel the way she has and just
Yeah.
kind of step right in, I think that just speaks magnitude, like her character.
Yeah.
And it really
100%.
shows
Yep.
just how good of an athlete she is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's very humble about it, too.
And
Okay.
she said she was surprised to be that number 1 seed. So
100%. Well, that puts a wrap on the women's side. Now Taylor Gordy has an interview with the number 1 seed in the women's bracket.
I'm Taylor Gordy here with Gab Giordano from Wilkes Softball and Wilkes Women's Basketball. She's a standout athlete in both sports, and as you just saw, she was picked for the number 1 seed in the female bracket. So now that you've seen your selection, what is your reaction on how things transpired?
A little surprised, definitely. Just being my first year at Wilkes and haven't really experienced this before, but I'm excited about it.
You surprised me with your answer. But how did you feel to transfer in your senior year and then also to have so much success in that 1 year?
I definitely credit that a lot to my teammates and coaches. They made the switch very easy for me. They were super welcoming and put me in a good position to be successful.
Very humble star. So best of luck to you and all the other athletes in the female bracket. Back over to Kirsten and you guys at the studio for more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. We'll be right back with the men's side after this short public service announcement.
Mother Earth, a gift under our care. Let's not go back. Nurture nature. Nourish the soil and your soul. Let's mend our planet together. Make Mother Earth smile.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the men's side of the bracket for the selection show.
Yeah, so again, a lot of interesting debates here on the men's side. We really talked about, really struggled, I think, with the at-large bids.
It was a tough
Really
decision.
struggled. I mean,
it took us a few
We
hours.
debated a long time
It took
about
us a
who
few
should get
hours
in.
to figure out who's getting in.
yep, yeah. So it was rough.
Yeah.
So
It was hard enough to pick who was getting in and then rank them.
So, I mean, for the men's side, we had a tough time getting them in. For the women's side, it was a tough time ranking them.
Yeah. It took longer to rank the women's, and it took longer to probably pick the at-large bids for the men.
100%.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I think you've kept the people
Waiting
long
long
here,
enough.
So.
Okay, in this bracket, we have number 3 seed Courtney Murphy from men's tennis facing off against men's soccer's Gabriel Nieves. Then we have men's ice hockey's Michael Gerska facing off against football's Devin Fink.
Yeah, so one note here, we did make a decision here in this pod here. We did originally have Luke Betancourt, but we decided that it would be in the best interest of the tournament if we had put in Gabriel Nieves instead, even though Betancourt was an automatic bid, and he did rightfully win an Athlete of the Week. He no longer attends Wilkes.
Yeah.
So we just felt like the substitution there.
Yeah.
Same
sport.
No pun intended, but the replacement there was needed.
And, you know, Gabriel Nieves is probably a name that we snubbed and overlooked completely.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is a guy who came in as a freshman, was the ECAC Rookie of the Month twice.
Yeah.
And their season's only 2.5 months. So to win the Rookie of the Month twice, is pretty impressive. He was one of the driving forces on that team, and now I think we really do have the big three for men's soccer in this bracket. With,
of course.
The other names that are in there as well.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, on to the next pod. We have number 11 seed baseball's Nicholas Capozzi against number 22 seed men's swimming Jared Byrne. Then we have men's volleyball's Daniel Sales against men's lacrosse's John Wink.
I'll tell you what, Coach Jax has been really, really high on John Wink. And you know what? Going into this season, you always hear coaches sometimes try and I don't want to say puff, but they advocate for their players maybe for different sorts of coverages and things like that. But he was not even close to wrong about John Wink, because Wink has had a tremendous season so far.
Yeah.
I will say it's nice to see him finally
stand
have
out.
this breakout season, because he's someone he's been on the cusp for the last few years.
Absolutely.
And, you know, part of that has to do with some of the guys that were on the team. You know, you kind of spread the ball around too much. He is now the featured guy. I know at the beginning of the year, teams weren't necessarily game planning for him. Now they know that
when you talk about men's lacrosse,
number 50 is the guy you got to watch on the field. And you see the impact he has when he's on the field. It opens everyone else up. And he still, while he's being double teamed, figures out a way to score.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have to keep a lookout for all of them on this part of the bracket. In the next pod, we have football's Jeff Stieber against baseball's JT Habishman. Then we have men's ice hockey's Phil Erickson against men's soccer's Camry Huff.
With obviously Stieber's a wonderful athlete.
100%.
Just had a really solid season this year. He was definitely a part, and Ben could probably speak to this, but I don't want Ben to have to do anything here for his football program. But Stieber, I thought, was a strong asset here for this Colonel program, as they try to come back from 0-10 and then really had obviously a much better season.
Yes.
But I still think of Camry Huff.
I think, look, Camry Huff and Jeff Stieber, I think, are clearly they're the higher seeds, but they're the two favorites to win these matchups.
Yep.
I think that's a matchup I'm looking ahead to and I'm excited for. Jeff Stieber is someone who, as a part of Wilkes football, we didn't know if he was going to be back until the end of the semester, end of the spring semester last year, because technically he was a senior, but he still had eligibility left. He still had another year. He decided to come back for another degree.
Well, we have another athlete in a similar situation that we're going to talk about in the second half.
Yeah. So he's a guy who he came back for another degree and decided to come back, and Wilkes football was happy to have him. But Camry Huff, you talk to anyone on the men's soccer team, he was the guy this year. They needed a goal. They looked to Camry Huff. Surprisingly fast, and that's how a lot of guys would
get it done, right?
That's how a lot of guys would describe Camry Huff. He's surprisingly fast.
Okay, in the bottom half of this pod, we have men's basketball's Tommy Bowen against men's ice hockey's Brandon Gordon. The winner of that matchup will face off against the number 2 seed football's Jose Tabora.
Jose Tabora, we had a lot of discussions about him and I won't give it away yet, but
Our number one
the
seed.
number 1 seed. We'll get to that in a second here. We had a lot of discussions on how we were going to place 1 and 2.
Even 3.
Yeah.
Even
I
3.
think even
1,
Yep.
2, 3. Yeah,
we
'cause
saw Courtney Murphy as
Courtney
the 3.
Murphy, yeah.
Those were 3 names we thought were pretty interchangeable.
They definitely needed to be at the
And,
top.
and again, Courtney Murphy, spring sport athlete, he could win an NCAA
Well, he's
title.
spring,
He
he's
could-
spring and fall.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is he could win an NCAA title this year, and we miss on that because of just the way the timing works. So,
because of the academic calendar,
yep,
honestly.
hey,
I
sometimes
don't-
that's how the cookie crumbles.
I don't
right?
want to overlook the 2 other names in there, though, Tommy Bowen and Brandon Gordon. Brandon Gordon was really turned into a mainstay in that for men's ice hockey in their inaugural season, and their fantastic inaugural season. And Tommy Bowen, another guy on the men's basketball team who had a very, very good year.
I'm pretty sure this was his best season of his 4 years. Definitely a standout.
Helping lead the Colonels to a MAC title game.
Okay, well, there's the first half of the men's bracket. Now on to the second half.
It's like a ShamWow, and there's more.
Here we go. Okay, we're going to start off with men's soccer's Kyle Bentz against baseball's Jack Fisher. And then men's basketball's Rob Pecorelli against wrestling's Ashton Janice. We have football's Vincent Rogers against men's ice hockey's Donald Flynn.
All right, out of these 6 names, one of them I know is going to stand out to people, and that's Vincent Rogers. Now, here's the thing that we struggled with as a committee, is because when you look at line play on the football field,
There's no stats.
It's hard. I mean, maybe you'll get some pancake blocks, but you can't put that quantitatively. So we kind of looked back. We talked to some of his teammates about his line play, and we felt that because of Vincent Rogers' line play, that he actually helped out our number 2 seed, Jose Tabora. So thought about that and had to show a little bit of love to the offensive line.
Yeah, I think Vincent Rogers is a guy who really just wasn't expected. I don't know if he's someone who could necessarily go too deep in the tournament. I think it's a nice
Recognition.
nod to him, like to be in. He's got a tough matchup in the first one against Donald Flynn, who is
Was a
not
top.
even the highest ranked men's ice hockey player, but he had more points per game than any freshman in the entire country across any level of college hockey.
The men's
Division
ice
1,
hockey
2, and
team
3.
this year, obviously, in their inaugural season, had a great season, and I think the bracket reflects those accomplishments.
100%. Okay, in our next pod, we have the number 5 seed, wrestling's Nicholas Racanelli against baseball's Gage Kudry. Then we have football's Nick Yannick against men's basketball's Mark Mullins. Excuse me.
I am really looking forward to the Nick Yannick-Mark Mullins matchup. I think Mark Mullins rightfully is seated higher, but I think he's got a tough matchup, especially the way that the voting is going to be conducted
So
through Twitter polls.
that's a great point. So one of the things that we didn't mention earlier, but I want to mention now, is should we have a tie or anything in any of these? So if we finish 50-50, 50% to 50%, which we actually saw a lot of last year,
Goes
the
to the
higher seed does get the nod. So that was something that the committee had to take into account, especially with the, if you look above the 16-17 matchup. That was just something that we felt, okay, hey, we're going to seed Kyle Bentz higher than Jack Fisher. Not to backtrack too far there, but hey, one more pot
But I
to
think
go.
baseball is a little bit something we should talk about too. We have Gage Kudry and we had JT Habishman before, and they were both athlete of the weeks, phenomenal pitchers, had fantastic weeks, but they're also both seated lower, especially when you have Jack Fisher and Nick Capozzi in the tournament as well, who've just been phenomenal in their senior seasons. Okay, in the next half of this pod, in our last little part for the bracket reveal, we have wrestling's Thomas Stokes against men's lacrosse's Ethan Weaver. And then we have football's David Cutteroff against men's ice hockey's Tyler Barrow.
Now, you look at Cutteroff. Cutteroff had, one good week of kicking there. He did take the job from the original starting kicker earlier in the season. But hey,
as a freshman.
Exactly. So fun to see Cutteroff get the nod there. Well, obviously he got the nod with the automatic bid, but just to see him in the tournament, really, I mean, you see it. Look, we have a kicker, we have an offensive line, really trying to diversify this thing. But I have to talk about wrestling and Tommy Stokes. I mean, you see Racanelli in there earlier. We did have discussions about how many wrestlers we were going to put in because they are a pretty much nationally ranked program. This year I know they were flirting with national ranking. Last year, no, but the previous year they've basically been a nationally ranked program. So it's very difficult for us to leave out wrestlers who are nationally ranked. So that's one thing to consider.
Stokes and Racanelli both were in nationals.
Yep.
Very impressive there. I think
Yeah.
the name, though, on this bracket, Tyler Barrow, he was, I personally was very taken by the fact, by Donald Flynn and Tyler Barrow. I did not know who to go. I did not know how to rank one higher than the other. I thought they both were very, very even. And clearly, the people who vote on Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, thought it was Tyler Barrow. So I think we had to go with the nod there because Tyler Barrow was someone who won the Rookie of the Year in the MAC, in the UCHC, and on the national level as well. So Tyler Barrow, clearly a very talented guy. Donald Flynn, he'll rack up the points. Barrow, he's got more of an all-around game.
Well, we revealed, 59 people in the two brackets here. So we have how many left?
One to go. Our
about
top seed on the men's side is none other than the reigning champion from last year, men's basketball's Marcus Robinson.
And again, we had a lot of discussion of the one and the 2 seed. Courtney Murphy very well could have been there instead. Jose Tabora could have very well been there instead. But we decided, and we tried, at least consciously, not to let the fact that he was a defending champion affect the seeding. But, I mean, you look back at the past season, and we felt that he was deserving of the number 1 seed. So he's back there again this year.
Yeah, I mean, Jose Tabora was second team all conference behind a couple guys at the quarterback at Misericordia and the quarterback at Del Val. His statistics really stood out to us. That's why we put him in the 2. Marcus Robinson, first team all conference. Many would argue the best defensive player in the conference. Really, in the end, that was the driving factor there.
I just think you can't dispute what he does on the court.
You cannot.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look back through the this half of the bracket here. I mean, we try to get as many sports teams in as possible. We did not make it a requirement that every team must have one. We did that a little bit last year, where we tried to see, okay, hey, let's get as many athletes as we can, but we were cautious with that because we wanted to make sure that we didn't snub anybody. Even 28, 29, 30, even though some of them might be automatic bids, we wanted to make sure that they were all deserving. So,
100%. Well, Robinson will await the matchup between Jack Fisher and Kyle Benz, I'm pretty sure, up at the top. Okay, well, that puts a wrap on the men's side. Now, Taylor Gordy has an interview with the number 1 seed in the men's bracket.
I'm Taylor Gordy here with Marcus Robinson from Wilkes Men's Basketball, and he won the last year's Beacon Athlete of the Year tournament and is looking to repeat this year. He finished his undergrad in just 3 years and is now an MBA graduate student. He was picked for number 1 seed in the bracket. So now that you've seen your selection, what is your reaction? How do you feel about it?
It's an honor. I mean, seeing all the other athletes on the bracket there, it's truly an honor. You got a lot of great athletes. You got Jose Tabora, you got Courtney Murphy, and even some guys on the basketball team that I feel like should have been a little higher, but I mean, it's the way the seeding goes. So it's going to be a tough year this year.
As reigning champion of last year's bracket, how do you feel entering this year's tournament?
I feel pretty confident, actually. I mean, when you look at the success of all the teams and also how the athletes perform, you got to look at also what those athletes, it's not just into the stats, it's also what they do on the court or on their playing field. I go out every day, guard the best player, and I still can average a decent amount of points. So, I mean, it's doing it all.
That's a good point. I feel like your character is really what brought you back here from last year, more so than your play. I mean, you're amazing on the court, but your character definitely brought you back. So the best of luck to you and all the other athletes in the men's bracket. And back over to Kirsten and the guys for more.
Thanks, Taylor. That puts a wrap on our field. Now, one more time, let's recap what happens.
So there are 30 athletes in each bracket. One will be crowned champion. Kirsten, I can't wait to see how this plays out.
I know, it'll be interesting to see how many upsets there will be.
Well, 60 names. We dished them all out. And now, again, all voting will be conducted on Twitter via @WilkesBeacon. So, hint, hint, if you don't follow @WilkesBeacon, you might want to. That way you can get your vote in. Be sure to check out all of the various Twitter accounts as we take a look at the Twitter accounts that will be covering this. We have obviously Editor-in-Chief Luke Modrovsky, myself, Ben Mandell, Kirsten Peters, and James Dotter, our Wilkes Now production assistant. And of course, you can follow coverage on www.thewilkesbeacon.com. We have the various hashtags there. Radio will be involved as well. But the big thing is @WilkesBeacon. That's the one you want to follow if you want to get your votes in, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
100%. Okay, well, thanks for watching today's selection show, and be sure to make your vote count in crowning both the men's and women's athletes of the year.